All right, there we go. A couple things today. We're going to do this poem, Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost. But first, let me go over flipgrid real quick for those of you who don't know what to do. So this is flipgrid. I'm going to drop it in every day. You have to put a response in, and your response is to answer these questions. What did you work on today? What did you finish? What do you still need to finish? And how can I help you? You answer those four, and you get credit for the day. It's that simple. Let's go ahead and show you an example. So when you sign into Flipgrid, this is going to pop up. You're going to log in with Microsoft. It's this red button. And you will be in a work or IT account. Go ahead and sign in using your Microsoft account for school. Oh, okay. Login successful. It'll take you to this page. There are more than one topic. It will be right here under this banner. So that is the topic. Make sure it's the topic for today. I don't care about that one. I care about the daily check-in. Make sure you click the right day. Last semester we were having problems checking the right day. So it says moderated, which means that nobody is going to see it until I actually allow them to. And I won't. This is just between you and I. I want to know how you're doing today. I want to know how well you're getting your work done. So I'm going to click on that to get started. This will pop up. You might get a thing that asks you, hey, can you please allow your camera and video? Obviously you want to. Hit record to record. If you forget what the topic is, you can show it and you can move it around your window so it's not in your way. You can have a sticky note to type in exactly what you want to say. My advice is to practice once or twice because you're going to need to. All right. When you want to record, you hit record. It'll count down for you. 3, 2, 1, and here it is. I'm recording. What did I do today? Blah, blah, blah. This little thing right here counts down the time you have left. If you want to pause it because you forgot something, you can, and then you hit play and it'll go ahead and do it again, or record. When I finish, I hit next, 2, 1, and it's going to actually play your video for you so that you can review it. When you're done with that, you hit next, you take a selfie. It asks you to take a selfie so you don't get stuck on a stupid face because nobody wants to see that. Like that. That's a stupid face. So, there we go. These are just effects that you can use. If you're going to use a sticker or an emoji, don't put more than 3 and don't cover your face. I want to be able to see who you are. But they got a bunch of crazy stuff to put on. And then you kind of move it around. Wow, awesome. You want to get rid of it, you just hit delete. You hit next, it's going to ask you to don't close the window. It's going to upload it. And then it will actually let you title it. I don't care. When you submit, it says, congrats. Heads up, this topic is moderated. Your video is visible when it's approved. Like I said, this is just for me. I'm not going to be showing this to anybody else, so I'm not going to approve any of them, so nobody else will see them. It's just a dialogue between you and I. What are you doing? And if you need any help. If you want to ask the people from last semester, I'm pretty quick about getting back to you when you do need help. Like I said, you could leave it here in the Flipgrid, or you can put it in the messages. I will say that the faster way to get to me is through messages, but I need a check-in at the end of the day from you, and instead of meeting again, we're just going to do this. Complete. See, video submitted. Your video will be hidden until approved. On the teacher side, this is what I see. Flipgrid video, it has one response. I'm going to click through your response. It's going to play. I'm going to give you a score for both things. And if I have anything to tell you, I can put it here and then hit email, and it'll send you an email with the feedback. So that is Flipgrid. If you have any problems with it, let me know. We will be doing one of these a day. They are worth 25 points. If you do not do them, it will quickly tank your grade. Please make sure that you do these. Let's move on. So we're talking about a poem today. This is Acquainted with the Night. You are going to be using a soapstone for this. If you don't remember what a soapstone is, you can look in the files category. I will be uploading the soapstone template into that right now. So it is there now. Soapstone template is in files. Show it to you on the screen real quick, just so you can see it right here. Speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, subject, and tone. And it went away. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So that's what soapstone is. So I'm going to walk you through the poem, talk about the poem, and then after I'm done talking about the poem, we will fill out this soapstone together. So if you have something to take notes with, now would be a great time to take that out. Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost. I have been one acquainted with the night. I have walked out in rain and back in rain. I have outwalked the furthest city light. I have looked down the saddest city lane. I have passed by the watchman on his beat and dropped my eyes, unwilling to explain. I have stood still and stopped the sound of feet when far away an interrupted cry came over the houses from another street. But not to call me back or say goodbye, and further still, at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky proclaimed the time was neither wrong nor right. I have been one acquainted with the night. First thing you want to notice about this poem, just by looking at it, look at it on the page. It has a certain setup. It's got these 3 groups of lines and a final 2. That's going to be important when we talk about it. So this is Acquainted with the Night, is a poem written by a Pulitzer Prize winning author, Robert Frost. He's probably one of the most famous American poets, prolific and celebrated as well. This is also one of his most celebrated poems. It's an exploration of isolation, sorrow, and despair, emotions that feel as inescapable as the night itself. These emotions, Frost suggests, are not unique to the speaker of this poem, but rather a universal part of the human experience. This poem is in the form of a sonnet, but it is not one of the traditional Italian or English sonnets. We just read the full text. Let's go on to the summary. So the speaker declares their familiarity with the night. It was raining when the speaker began to walk across the city, and it was still raining at the end of the walk. During the walk, the speaker progressed beyond even the outermost light of the city. The speaker looked into the most desolate city street. The speaker also passed by a watchman patrolling the city. The speaker, however, looked down to avoid eye contact with the watchman, not wanting to talk about the reasons behind the speaker's nighttime walk. During the walk, the speaker stopped moving upon hearing a distant, broken-off cry. The sound of this other human's voice traveled across houses from a different street. However, the voice did not call to the speaker to come back or bid the speaker farewell. Even more distant and higher up, the moon shines like a bright clock in the sky. The metaphorical clock declares that the time is not wrong or right, and the speaker again says that they are familiar with the night. There are a couple different themes going on in the poem. The first one is isolation, right? Isolation, you can lump them all together. Isolation, sorrow, and despair. The speaker in the poem describes this solitary nighttime outing in the city. It seems like aimless wandering. But the speaker, while wandering, kind of grapples with the sense of despair and sorrow. The speaker's emotions are so powerful that they prevent the speaker from talking or connecting with others, keeping the speaker in this state of isolation. The poem thus implies that a link between these states, despair, leads to isolation, and then vice versa. Isolation leads to despair. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. The poem further explores how isolation, sorrow, and despair can feel like it's unescapable, like walking through an endless night. The physical details of the city at night reflect the speaker's mood. So the speaker says he is one acquainted with the night. Night is generally associated with darkness, which in turn is associated with suffering and despair. Thus, the speaker's familiarity with night is also a direct link to their familiarity with the emotions of suffering and despair. More of the sense of isolation pervades the poem. Acquainted, that term right there, it's kind of used ironically, right? Because an acquaintance is like somebody you have a connection with. But the only thing that the speaker really is connected to is this sense of loneliness and isolation. Rain is often associated with sorrow, as well as raindrops often representing human tears. Therefore, this physical rain that surrounds the speaker is a reflection of the speaker's sorrow. As the speaker continues walking, the darkness and sorrow, of his surroundings, get worse. And the speaker walks beyond, it says, the furthest city light. Right here, the last line of the first tercet. He's sinking further into physical darkness. The speaker characterizes this city lane as the saddest. So he uses a lot of superlatives here. The furthest, the saddest. They're the most of these feelings. The despair and sorrow, basically, that he's experiencing kind of seems never ending. Although the speaker continues to progress on the walk, he moves farther and farther. He doesn't go anywhere on a figurative and emotional level. The sense of despair and the sorrow stay with him the whole time. And it's like the night itself. It surrounds him. What's more, the speaker's feelings of suffering and despair prevent even the speaker from finding any happiness in companionship, and that kind of preserves this state of isolation. He says he's deliberately walked beyond the furthest city light and is thus on the outskirts of the city. He's unlikely to encounter another human being to keep company with. However, when he does encounter this watchman that patrols the city, a sense of protection, a sense of rights, he refuses to make eye contact with him. Then the speaker, in a human voice from far away, right, the cry. The distance and the darkness make it impossible for the speaker to locate the owner. Moreover, the voice does not call back or say goodbye. Neither the speaker nor the other voice can make a connection with one another. Okay, more isolation, more loneliness. The speaker is teased with opportunities for human contact right here with his watchman on the beat, and then hearing the cry. The speaker doesn't make a connection and therefore perpetuates his isolation. The speaker's walk doesn't provide the solace or resolution the speaker searches for. Rather, the speaker remains in the same state as at the beginning. You can see the first line, I have been one, acquainted with the night. Reflected here in the last line, I have been one, acquainted with the night. This beginning and end parallel, it lets us know the speaker hasn't moved from what he was feeling at all. The moon, the speaker refers to one luminary clock, that's the moon. Says the time is neither wrong nor right. And then even the moon can't provide an answer to when his solace will be over. The moon gets its light from the reflection of the sun. The sun is seen as warmth, as connectivity, as light, as hope. And the moon reflects that hope even into the darkness, right? So even though there's a sign of hope in the darkness, this luminary clock in the sky, he's still not connecting to that sense at all. He's just getting further and further into his loneliness. All right, let's look at a couple of things in this poem. So, lots of darkness in this poem, right? It's associated with negative emotions, evil or fear. In a literal sense, when an individual is surrounded by darkness, that individual is unable to see or connect to the world around them. The darkness can bring danger too. Think about that, especially if you're on the outskirts of a city, like in a forest, right? Or mountains, and the darkness camping. Danger lurks all around. We don't know what's out of our sphere of light because we can't see that well. So, danger. The darkness can bring death and suffering as well, right? Danger, death, suffering, they all go together. Acquainted with the night, we have this darkness. It's symbolic of the speaker's relationship to their despair and their sorrow and their isolation from the rest of humanity. The speaker never explicitly uses the word dark in the poem, right? However, the darkness is clearly implied through the mention of night. We have it in lines 1 and line 14. The speaker walks through the city at night, and he declares his familiarity with it. Therefore, the speaker declares the familiarity with the despair and the sorrow and isolation. Also in line 3, when he has outwalked the furthest city light, the absence of light when he outwalked it implies darkness again. Okay, it intensifies it. In contrast to darkness, light is associated with positive emotions. Okay. Right here in line 3, it says there is city lights, right? There's a presence of it. However, it doesn't signal an increase in light. He's walking past it. He's walking outside it. So the city light here only serves as a marker between the lights in the city and the darkness beyond. The progression into literal darkness is symbolic of the speaker's further immersion into his metaphorical darkness and the associated feelings of despair, sorrow, and isolation. The luminary clock in the sky, we kind of talked about that. It's a metaphor for the moon. It's out of reach. It's unattainable, right? And still, further still, at an unearthly height, one luminary clock. The moon cannot be reached by earthly figures such as the speaker, and for the speaker, the moon's light is distant and out of reach, as are the hope and the joy that light signifies. Instead of offering hope, the moon's light only highlights his despair. Rain is the next one. Rain is often associated with sorrow and mourning. Raindrops falling are used as symbols to represent teardrops. The speaker begins and ends their walk in the rain. So there we go. Symbolically, he begins and ends his journey in sorrow and despair. These feelings seem inescapable for our speaker. And indeed, he cannot progress beyond them no matter what actions he takes, no matter how far he walks, no matter what he does. There's a clock. They track time here, and human systems are relatively technologically advanced objects. Clocks are often associated with civilization. The marking of time itself and the invention of time, the fact that we measure it, the fact that we can count it and we have a unit of measure for it, it's a very human iteration of a sense that has been going on forever, right? So the clock in here, this luminary clock against the sky, represents the inability of human civilization to provide comfort, certainty, or direction to our speaker. In line 11, right here, one luminary clock against the sky. The speaker who is very much at it, we have a distinction here, unearthly height, right? The moon is so high, the speaker is actually on earth, so we have to distinguish that. So the speaker cannot connect to the moon or himself or other humans. It's just a lot of despair and darkness. Consequently, the symbol of the clock emphasizes his isolation and the inability of the human connection to comfort the speaker. Lastly, we have a little bit of personification, giving non-living things living elements. The surrounding environment is personified in various ways to reflect the speaker's desire for human connection. We talked about that a little bit. We talked about city lights being a connection to other people. Saddest City Lane, the watchman. Okay, he's unable to connect to the watchman. Faraway cry. He doesn't know what direction it's coming in. Yes, it's another source of contact, but he still can't connect to it because he can't tell where it's coming from. And he knows it's not to call him back or say goodbye. So overall, this personification of night throughout the poem and the darkness, the speaker desires human connection, but he cannot establish it. Let's talk about a little bit of repetition. There's a lot of repetition. in this poem. The various forms of repetition can stress the magnitude of the speaker's emotions, right? So let's look at the anaphora of the phrase. Anaphora basically means the repetition of an initial line in a poem or a speech. You can have it in a speech too. I have. So lots of repetition here. Repeating that at the start of each line, it emphasizes the fact that the speaker has tried various things during his walk. Nothing alleviates his sorrow or despair or isolation. Okay, so here's another little bit of repetition. In rain and back in rain. It's a little different. It's an apostrophe. You don't need to know that, but it's a repetition within a line. So the speaker starts and ends journey both physically and emotionally in the same manner. Nothing has changed. And the repetition of the image of the rain that we talk about reinforces the inability to progress or escape from their despair or sorrow or isolation over the course of his walk. Additionally, we got the poem beginning and ending with the same line. The speaker's own declaration, his familiarity with despair, sorrow, and isolation. It seems at first like that may be the problem in the poem, but by the end of the poem, it more comes back as a sense of defeat and hopelessness. So let's talk about it being a sonnet, right? So a sonnet, a traditional sonnet, you set up a problem at the top and you talk about a problem here. And then about line 12, 11 or 12, you have a solution to your problem. And then this is your outcome at the end, right? That's traditionally how a sonnet is put together. Our sonnet establishes kind of the problem here with him being acquainted with the night. And all it does is explain what he means by that in different ways. It expands upon our initial problem of being acquainted with the night. And where we're supposed to get this great feeling of relief because something has been figured out, we don't. It builds up to, I see the moon in the sky, and it can't tell me how to get out of the current situation that I'm in. So I guess I have been one acquainted with the night. There's no satisfactory outcome in this poem, in this sonnet. So no resolution of the problem. There's a lot of enjambment going on. Enjambment means that, like the sentence right here, let's take a look at the first line. That's a full sentence. I have been one acquainted with the night. That's an end stop line. Look at line 5 and 6. I have passed by the watchman on his beat and dropped my eyes, unwilling to explain. Line 5 and 6 have enjambment because you read them together as a sentence. So are all of these. This is actually one line. That is one complete sentence right there. It's very long, and it's a little complicated, but it's one sentence. I have stood and stopped by the sound of feet when far away an interrupted cry came over the houses from another street, but not to call me back or say goodbye. And further still, at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky proclaimed the time was neither wrong nor right. Boom, one sentence. Lots of enjambment going on within there. Let's wrap this sucker up. Let's go back to our soapstone, right? I can't drag. Hold on. There we go. Dragged into the screen. Let's look at the soapstone. I don't want to do that. Let's just do this. All right. So speaker. Let's talk about that. So who is our speaker in this poem? Is it Robert Frost? Well, no. We kind of learned that in first semester that your speaker is not always your author. That's just not something that happens. Sometimes it is. We read a poem about intro to poetry, Introduction to Poetry by Billy Collins, where yes, you could totally make an argument that the speaker was the poet Billy Collins. But in this case, no, I don't think so. Our speaker is nameless and genderless. We don't know if it's a man or a woman. And while it's possible that it is Frost himself, the speaker could be anyone. Indeed, he seems to leave out any personal details. Why? Because he wants everybody to be able to relate to it, right? He thinks that anybody should be able to relate to the speaker and Acquainted with the Night. It's like a universal aspect of human experience because the speaker isn't identifiable. It can and does happen to anyone, the sense of feeling despair and loneliness. The main thing that readers know about the speaker is that they are immersed in a state of sorrow and despair. They want to escape from those feelings, so they go on a walk at night. And the speaker, even though he walks very far, those feelings for him are inescapable. So that's our details about the speaker. Occasion. We know it's at night. We know it's raining. We know he goes on a long walk. And we know that he comes back. Okay? Where it's within a city, it seems pretty urban, not suburban or rural, right? Geographical, chronological. We know it was written in 1927, but we don't think it, at least I don't think it's limited to that time period. I think it could be a universal thing, right? As long as there's a city to walk in, this poem can take place. We know that he walks out and walks in very full of sorrow and despair, and nothing changes. So that is our occasion. Audience. Well, who was the primary audience for this? That's an interesting one. Is it a reader? Was it a reflection that he wrote during this time of despair to try and get his feelings out? Was it written for somebody else to hopefully make this connection? They can't make a connection in the poem itself. So maybe he's writing it to be able to connect to somebody later that also has these feelings. The purpose, he wrote it to talk about his struggles with sorrow and despair, and the fact that sometimes he, no matter what he does, he still feels this, right? So yes, it is about a walk at night on the top. On the surface, it's, I walked out, this is what happened, if you want to take it literally. I don't think it's meant to be taken literally. I think it's meant to be taken with the symbolism and the figurative meanings behind it. And so the depth at which we can relate is the purpose of this. It's to share his feelings of despair, sorrow, and hopefully make connections that he couldn't make while he was out on his walk. The subject, we've talked about it before, it's loneliness, it's despair, it's sorrow. Those are the three things. He's feeling it. He wants to make a connection. He can't. And even though he's tried to clear his head and get rid of these feelings, he cannot. And that is the subject. The tone. We talked about the fact that it's a sonnet, right? And a sonnet has a specific structure where they set up a problem and then solve it. This one doesn't get solved. It has a lot of dark and sorrowful and really depressing undertones with things like night and out walking the furthest city lights, and the fact that he dropped his eyes, unwilling to explain to the watchman, and he hears a call. And what I think is interesting here in line 10, but not to call me back or say goodbye. Like, he reads into that, the call that he hears at night, that he knows it's not for him, somebody to call him back or say goodbye. So very dark, very deep and isolated. And they're like some poems that have a nice tone shift. This one doesn't have a shift at all. It's from top to bottom, is about despair, is about sorrow, and is about loneliness. So that is your soapstone for Acquainted with the Night. A little bit of historical context. The Roaring 20s, 1920s, they were called the Roaring 20s, mostly due to the nation's flourishing economy and prosperity. We had a lot of innovation. We had a lot of invention that really dominated that period. This is kind of a juxtaposition of that time of hope, of awesomeness, of invention, and of happiness, right? He's saying that even though all this is around and even though all these things are happening, there are still people out there who are in the midst of sorrow and despair and can't seem to get out of it. So it juxtaposes the time it was kind of written with the context that it was in. That is Acquainted with the Night, my fumbling interpretation of Acquainted with the Night. Let's take a look at teams. Let's go to teams. I have set up your novel groups right now. If you are not in a novel group, please let me know. I will put you in one. For your novel groups, when you answer your study guide, this is where it goes, right here. All you have to do is start a Word doc, and look, I can make a new Word document right here in my files. Name it Study Guide Answers. And then it will live here forever. When you need to go back and edit it, come to the Files tab, click on it, and answer the questions there. Those answers will automatically be saved all the time. You don't have to worry about sending me things. You don't have to worry about email attachments. Like, you should never literally have to email or send me anything in Teams. This is why I like Teams. This is why I use Teams, because everything can be done right here in Teams. Same thing with your assignments, right? Let's take a look at an assignment if it loads. So, open window, short story, right here. Let's look at your student view. See this open window answers, put them here. All you have to do is click on that. It will open up a document and you can answer these questions in that document. If it ever opens. All right, so this is the test for the selection test. Guys, number one, just put the answer. I don't need you to type all this stuff out. It's a waste of time. What I do need you to do is, on these essay questions, you're just going to write me a sentence or two. I don't need an essay. I don't want an essay. I don't have time to read essays. What I want to make sure is that you connect to the story and that you can answer these quickly. All right? 1 to 2 sentences, and that's it. Once I type them in there and once I answer them, all I need to do is close and then hit submit. When you hit submit, I will be able to grade that assignment. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm opening up another Office page. All right, so I have opened up Teams. I have another account that I put in there. It's called Educational TOSAs, and I use it to make sure that everything looks great on your side. So here's the Teams from the student view, if it ever loads. Use the web app. Here's ours. Let's click in it. Assignments. So once I do an assignment, let's look at Acquainted with the Night. So I'm going to fill out this soapstone. It's worth 50 points. When I'm done, and I've typed everything in, I hit this button right here that says turn in. Okay? I have now turned that assignment in, and that lets me know as the teacher, hey, this is ready to be graded. So please grade this. If you don't hit that, I don't know it's ready to be graded, and I won't even look at it. So make sure you hit turn in. If you need to undo it for any reason, guess what? You can undo it, or you can turn it in. All that stuff right here. Make sure you hit this button when you're done so I know that it is ready to be graded. One other thing about Teams, let's go ahead and look in the chat. I dropped this in here right now. This is your vocab test. This is where you put your name. This is where you put my email, tcovington@bassettusd.org. That is crazy big. Stop doing that. Okay, put my email in there. It sends me a message that says, hey, look it, somebody took a vocab test and this is what they got. So I need you to get over 50% of the items correct for me to count it on your assignment, all right? So 50% counts toward your grade. And you get 5 points extra credits. I am putting people in groups right now, so I will leave you a message about what group you are in if you are not in one yet. Remember, right after this, we meet in novel groups for an hour. There are 6 parts of Mice and Men. This week, you should be doing parts 1 and 2. We'll have a little bit of time. I extended the deadline till Monday for you to get part 1 and 2 done, but seriously, it's only about 20 pages each part. Less than that. So let's make sure we're getting that done. If you have any questions, as always, I will be answering them. Drop them right here in the meeting chats or send me a direct chat message. Unless you guys have any questions, it is novel group time. I will be online here waiting for you to see if you have any questions. If not, start meeting in your novel groups. Have a good day.